join with video.
There you are. We're here. We're in.
Join computer audio.
Okay. I think we're in.
Yep. I'm gonna hang up.
How you doing, man? It's freaking hot down here again.
No, I'm doing great, man. Well, we had a fire. There's a fire down by Reading. So with the fire in Reading, the Zog fire, 11,000 acres, it blew smoke up here again. So yesterday, the air index was like 4. Now it's 199. So it is what it is.
Wow, man. So listen, let's start this like I always start the interviews. Ladies of my audience, everybody, this is Leo Rossi. Leo Rossi's been started off. You actually you were born here in San Pedro, weren't you?
No, I was born in San Francisco.
Oh,
I moved to San Pedro about, I guess I was like maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6, but we split time between both cities. But my main upbringing of grade school, middle school, high school was San Pedro.
Was San Pedro. And I know you went to San Pedro High.
I did.
Did you go to Catholic school or no?
No.
No Catholic school.
No, but I was raised real strict Italian Catholic.
Like me, I was adopted by people in New York, and I went to Catholic school, St. John's College, the whole number.
Yeah, no, I never went. I did the whole catechism thing and all that. Did confirmation and all that. But
it didn't help us anyway.
Well, it's like you said. Our parents came from the foreign lands looking for the American dream, and and we were just part of it.
Leo, you and I know a lot of people in the business, just by accident we met down here, but I'm sure our paths crossed over the years.
I think we passed early on with Santana. When you were with Santana and I was with Mac, there were some openings that Carlos did with the Mac, and I think I remember it's like 76 or something. I think
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right, because people don't really understand what. Well, first of all, you started as a light designer. Is that what you did?
Hey, put your camera down so I can see your whole face.
Yeah, I got it.
Other way. Keep going.
I think I'm here. There you go.
Yeah, there you are.
There you go.
Yeah, I did. The way it started was this. I was, I was born with 4. I was the 4th. My three older siblings were very overachievers. They became teachers, very successful. My brother was the first Italian male, so all the pressure was on him. Be a doctor, be a lawyer. I mean, my parents wanted it. So when they came down to me, I was like, They cared about me, but I was like the forgotten child. So I had no idea. I think I was my dad was big in the docks, and I was gonna be a longshoreman. Basically, that was it. So when I was registering for high school, I had no idea what I was going to do in life. And I was walking through registering for classes, and Dick Demar, Mr. Demar from San Pedro High, he was the stage class teacher. And he called me over and said, "Hey, kid, I really, really need one more student to sign up for this class. Can I get the hell out of here? This is painful." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "It's stage production class." He goes, "It's fun. It's easy. There's never homework." And he goes, "And you get to do all the assemblies, so you get out of school a lot. Get out of class a lot." Perfect. I signed up for the class, but I loved it. There were all these artistic misfits that I fit in with, that accepted me for me. And I didn't have to be the studious. I didn't have to be the athlete like my brother, It was completely so it was perfect for me. So what had happened was we went to a field trip at the old Long Beach Auditorium.
Yeah.
That's not no longer there. And we went to see a play. So at intermission, I think it was either Man of La Mancha, Cabaret, I forget. But anyways, whatever. It was horrible. I didn't like it. I was sitting out front going like, ugh. At intermission, I looked and I saw a door. And I snuck backstage, and I found this chair against the fly rail and just sort of sat back, and I watched the whole thing from backstage, and it was friggin' phenomenal. I mean, the lights, the people, the scenery moving. I'm going, man, this is really cool stuff. So when the show ended, I tried to sneak out, and man, I almost got out, but this one guy, it was actually these 2 guys coming down from the spotlights got me and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm on a field trip and I hate, and so I got busted. I got in trouble. So John Cleese, the drama teacher, got with the technical director. His name was Kim Killingsworth, and Kim and him got together. And John, I guess, told him that I was real interested in theater, and I was pretty good at it, lighting and stuff. And this was my 1972 when I was a freshman or something. So they said, I tell you what, for a punishment, you have to be a stagehand. So I had to work on the weekends. I had to work off my punishment, and that went for about a month. And then they said, would you like to do an apprenticeship? And I go, yeah, this would be great. So literally for 3 years, I was an apprenticeship at the Long Beach Civic Light Opera, and I was doing plays, operas, anything that came through. And I was learning how to build scenery, do lighting, do sound, fix problems with all these staunch, heavy, union guys that were just really hardcore union guys.
I was going to get
how the union guys are. So
yeah.
But they also said, listen, so Long Beach Arena is next door, and we do the concerts there, and we also do the concerts here. You get 25 cents an hour, and you can have the T-shirt if you want to work the shows.
25 cents an hour, boy, we bought a lot of M&Ms with that.
Yep. So, man, it was, Deep Purple, The Who, Electric Light Orchestra, Elvis, the Beach Boys, the Pointer Sisters. Everybody was coming through Long Beach. The Forum wasn't really anything yet.
And how did you parlay that? Who was the first act that you actually went out on the road with for life?
What happened was I kept getting all these offers during that time to go on the road. In my senior year, I could have quit high school and I could have went, because they kept asking me. The same guys kept coming through. Continental Lighting, Showco, all the lighting sound companies were coming through. And man, I could fix all that shit. I put this in my book and I say it in my presentations. I was getting this reputation as a kid that could fix anything. People would come up to me on tour and say, hey, we knew you were going to be here. Can you fix these 3 par cans? They're broke. We don't know what's wrong with them. And I knew how to fix them. So all these tour offers started coming in, but my father was going to let me go on tour. He wanted me to graduate. So I graduated, and I had offers for scholarships, the USC School of Norris Center for School of Arts. But what I did is I wanted to try that. So I went to LA City College for a second and lit Shakespeare, which was a lot of fun. But I kept working down at Long Beach. Then all of a sudden I get a phone call from one of the lighting companies that kept coming through. His name was Dave Oberman, OB Lighting. And OB calls me up and says, hey, I got a tour if you want to do it. And I said, sure, what is it? He goes, well, it's a stadium run. It's about 3.5, 4 weeks up and down the coast with The Who.
Oh, that was the first gig.
That was my first gig. So
what year was that, Leo?
1976.
So who was in that? Was Mooney still alive, or was that Kenny?
Alive, man. And I swear to God, I was on stage every night. I could not take my eyes off Keith Moon. What a great drummer.
He was out of his freaking mind.
Crazy. But the thing is we had no stage lights. We had 26 spotlights.
Yeah.
So each guy had 6 spotlights on him. Yeah. And that was the first show with moving lights. There was like these big 10Ks to get floodlight.
Right.
But the lighting guy, I forgot his name, was genius. So I did the whole tour, and I was befriended by the guitar tech, Alan Rogan, who.
I know Alan Rogan very well.
Alan passed away.
Very well.
He passed away. Alan passed away.
Oh, yeah. I know him very well. Very well.
So Alan was like, who are you? And I just said, dude, I'm just a kid that wants to learn. He taught me about monitors, about the stage gear. And then after the Who tour, man, it's so funny. So here, dig this. After the Who tour, I went back to Obi's shop. They asked me to come in, and they said, you got to sign some paperwork. And I went, okay. So I did the whole tour, and I signed this form that was called a W-9 or something, So then they gave me an envelope, and I went, what's this? And they said, your pay. And I just realized, oh shit, I get paid for this now.
What were you making back then? What did you make back then?
I just wrote it. I just saw that. I saw the paycheck stub. That check in 1976 was for $4,800.
See, for how many weeks? For 3 weeks?
For 3.5.
That's not, when you think about, 1976.
Great money.
When I was with Carlos, you did Bette Midler, but I did Bette and Barry when we started in New York, when we played at the Continental Baths and everything. It's before she had a record deal. And then I went out with Barry. And then
she did the whole gay circuit.
Yeah, well, that was, hello. I played with Angie Bowie. I played with all of them. So, I played with the Bowie people, so I know about the gay thing. But here, Leo, here's the other side of it. So how long did you stay doing lighting, designing? And then when did you move into, what was the next move after lighting? Did you do
after lighting? Production.
Yeah, you did actual production.
So you got here, you know, all the good tour managers
Yeah.
and great production managers
Yeah.
really started as lighting guys. And I'll tell you why. Because the lighting was always the first in and the last out. So when you're first in, so when I used to so after the Who tour, Fleetwood Mac just started hitting big, and there was maybe 6 of us or 7 of us on the tour as a crew. There really wasn't positions.
But before we get into that, you know what? This is because I have a lot of kids and a lot of people out there
Right.
that don't quite understand the technical aspects of being tour manager, road manager, and tour manager, and what it means to actually
and tour director.
what it actually means to set up a room.
What does it mean to set up a room?
Yeah, because kids want to know about that. You know, they want to know what goes in first. The lighting goes in first. Then
Yeah, it's layered. It's layered. So typically what happens is, well, the way it happened back then, now it's completely different because the shows are different. But the way it happened back then is your lighting rigs were always what went above everybody. So it obviously had to go in first.
Right.
So you would come in the morning, and the first thing you'd do is, like, you know, get a stale donut and a cup of coffee, and then the riggers would come in. Well, before rigging, we used to do everything on ground support with lifts. So the lighting would come in, and you get the lighting up. The stage would be there, and you'd get the lighting, you put the lighting up, and then the sound would come in. And as the sound's coming in normally on the sides, you can bring the band gear in. So you layered everything in. So as the lights went up, the sound would come in, you'd power everything up. And then the band gear would come in, and you'd fine tune the instruments, and then you connect it all through the, you know, from the stage to the splitter box to the monitor board to the front of house board. At the same time, the lighting is getting all their shit together, backdrops and everything else.
Now you see, I want to get into the technical aspects of it, because a lot of kids have asked me about this, especially my son's friends, and a lot of kids from Disney are going to watch this today. They wanted to know. You know, now we have these, you know, dyno amplifiers that are all digitized and, you know, shake circuits. The old days, everything was based around tubes. Now, if you had 100, now I know the question, but I want you to explain this, especially the tech guys that are on gear sluts and everything. When you had a 200,000 watt PA in those days,
right?
How many amplifiers did it take to power that system?
Well,
and how many backups did you have to have?
Depending on the output of the amp, but, you know, traditionally an amplifier was about 1,000 watts, and it would be 500 per side is what we would look at. So depending on how many speakers you had, you know, but normally, like with the old Clare Brother PAs, I think I remember seeing if we had 50 S4s, wow. we would have per side, we would probably have about 40 amplifiers, and you had redundance because if amplifiers went out, you had to switch off in the middle of the show so you didn't lose. So you would be looking at, you know, probably 40,000 watts of amplification per side, I think is what I remember. Lighting, we would be at 600 amps. Wow. Sound, normally we can get away with 200 amp hours. And the band gear was minimal, you know?
Yeah, but
and then to connect it all, you had to make sure that, you know, there was ground consistency, neutral consistency because of buzzes, you know? And you know, it was so funny because I was a king at killing buzzes, but the first Fleetwood Mac tour, when we did lights and sound, believe it or not, it was so archaic that we had one distribution panel that did light, sound, and band gear on one distribution. And we used to get away without getting buzzes. We had one panel was to plug in the AC boxes for the sound. One tweak goes in the AC for the lights, and the other panel was for the band gear outlets. And then the one panel had the different circuitry. And we built these things from scratch, and we tried to ground everything separately. But, you know, every once in a while there'd be that one buzz, and you'd have to isolate it to one guitar, and it could be that it was the cable. It could be that you had to lift the ground. It had to be that you had to have a certain kind of light away from the amplifier because it picked up the RF.
Oh, I know that.
I mean, so it was, you know, you had to know your shit. You know, and back then you had to fix shit. You know, you just didn't replace a circuit board. You had to fix stuff.
I do a Fender bass masterclass. And the kids always ask me, why Chico, all these years, you know, you've only used Fender? I said, because of the problem that we're talking about. I said, every time I used you know, Joe Schmonoid guitar from some company, that I would bring it on the stage, and the first thing the sound guy would say, get rid of it, please? Could we use the Fender?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's see that's you know the other side of it is now let's get to Fleetwood Mac because now you had your first taste of glory with the Who, and then how did you get into Fleetwood Mac? Who
Well,
actually?
I saw the old Fleetwood Mac in Long Beach when they came through. There was a bogus Fleetwood Mac that didn't have Mick or
I
John.
remember that.
Fan, but I knew Fleetwood Mac. So what had happened was Obi, when I did the Who tour, was friends with John Courage, who was JC, who was Fleetwood Mac's tour manager from England.
Yeah.
They relocated to Los Angeles, and JC and Obi befriended each other, and they became roommates. So Obi had called me one day and said, "You remember Fleetwood Mac?" And I said, "Yeah," because in October of 1975, I did a small run with them just to do lighting trusses. Curry Grant, who was the lighting designer from Lone Star, Texas.
I remember them. Oh,
So Curry brought a lighting rig out, but they didn't want to bring trusses or lifts. So I brought out the trusses and lifts. So in October, November of 1975, I did like maybe 4 or 5 days. San Bernardino Swing, remember that?
yeah.
The Arlington and Santa Barbara, some other places, you know. And so I knew of them, and this is when the White Album was just getting to where it was, the Fleetwood Mac album.
Yeah.
So Obi had called me and said, "You remember we did Fleetwood Mac?" He said, "Well, they're taking off." He said, "But they're going to do some rehearsals in Hollywood, and they want to light the rehearsals for a new record they're working on."
Where did you do that? SIR?
SIR.
Yeah.
SIR. So he said, "But here's the thing." He said, "I'm going to do it and throw on the lights because if they go on the tour, we'll get the tour, but there's no pay. Do you want to do it?"
No
and
pay.
I said, "Yeah, there's no pay." I had no pay. He said, "You want to do it?" He says, "Well, I'm going to try to help them out. Would you mind doing it?" And I said, "No, I got nothing going on." So I packed up 2 trusses, a little truck. We drove up to SIR. I walked in, and at that point, Curry had got fired. And the reason he got fired is because he had a romantic thing with Chris. I don't want to talk about the band. So they had a guy named Mike Miller who was the drum roadie and the drum tech, and he became the lighting designer. And he said but it was horrible. I mean, Mike was great, but he just didn't know how to do lights. And I knew more about it than he did. He was like using the wrong lights for the wrong thing. So the band huddled together and said, we need to bring Curry back. And I didn't know at the time. They said, we need to bring our old lighting designer back. So they told me just sit over there, I set up the lights, just sit over there until the new LD comes in. And I sat on this couch literally 10 feet, 12 feet from the stage. And Lindsay said, "Why don't we break into something, play some stuff just to, until." So they did, and they got into So Afraid. And when I saw So Afraid live 10 feet from it, now take it. I had seen Stairway to Heaven, Humble Pie, 30 Days in the Hole. I mean, I've seen every great band by this time in my life. When I saw them do So Afraid and the energy and the connection of what that band had became, I can't explain it. It was surreal that 5 people became one. And I just said, holy hell, they have grown. And then they got into Go Your Own Way, which was brand new. This song called Thunder, which became the song Dreams.
Yeah.
And they went into this whole thing, and I just went. So then that night I was sitting around, and in walks Curry. And I go, and I met Curry the first time at Long Beach with Humble Pie. We did a show where the light rig fell over because they forgot to undo the backdrop, and it filled up as a sail, and the whole truss system fell. It fell right on and it was old Heil PA. And it's so funny. I talked to Bob Heil the other day, the only sound man in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we were talking about how the whole PA, everything, if the crowd was there, people would have got killed.
Yeah.
Curry tackled me, threw me under the drum riser. And so that's the first time I met Curry. So when he walked in, I said, "Curry Grant, what are you doing here?" He goes, I'm the LD. And I said, I'm the lighting guy. I'm with Obi's. And so we sat at the napkin and we redesigned everything, and we needed to get some stuff the next day. And then they brought Curry back, and then I met the band, and they were just really great people. It was a real family. And then Curry had mentioned to Chris that I did it for free. And then JC came up to me and said, "Hey, we think you'd be great to be on the tour if you're working for Obi." And I said, "Sure." So we started the tour, and when we got on the road, it was Ray Lindsay, who was a great guitar tech. Ron Penny was sort of stage manager, did bass and drums. Who forgot who was doing? Jeff Jacobs was doing the drum teching, and then Mark Drayle from Tycho Brahe, and Kenny Del Sandro were sound guys.
Yeah.
Front of house was Mark. But the funny part was there was really no sort of production manager. There was a stage manager, which was Rhino, but nobody really figured out as we started getting into the bigger, how to get in, deal with
So
the
who was
union.
managing? Who was managing them at that time?
They were managing themselves.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, here's my experience with them. Unfortunately, I have good things and bad things to say about them, because when they first started off, I knew them when they were Buckingham Nicks up in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Eddie Money had just come out to San Francisco, and they were working on. He was working on Two Tickets to Paradise. I played with Eddie for 10 or 15 years over my career, and he had just come out there, and I was with Carlos, and we went down to see them. I think at Bimbo's or someplace. I can't remember. It wasn't a Great American Music Hall, and she was a waitress. She was a waitress at some place.
Yeah.
And he was just, they had just did that Buckingham Nicks album, and Richard Nashett was the producer. And, so I had just met them, and we had a little bit of a jam. And
Keith Olsen. Keith Olsen produced it. Richard was Lindsay and Stevie's friend that sort of became the communicator.
Yeah, I love Keith. I love Keith Olsen. He was great too. But so that's how I met them. Unfortunately, at that time in the 70s, and I was very lucky, but I was a very young boy on the road, and I had Bill Graham around me to kick my ass all the time. But what I saw with all those crazy bands, the crazier that schedule got, the more deeper that inner conflict in that band was, creating that incredible tension. But the outside pharmaceuticals were getting everybody at one point, where they started off, they were so great. And that's one thing that I know Carlos and me and a lot of guys prided ourselves, is that we were always professionals, and we played, and we were always at the top of the game. And my feeling about them was always the time. You guys provided them with a great structure to be there. But as it wore on, to me, it got old quickly. Their playing kind of went this way. Their playing kind of went that way. The inner conflicts of the band started showing. But here's the thing that I want to know about. How many years did you stay with them? How many years were you with them?
75 till the Clinton inauguration in 1993.
Shit, you were with them for fucking ever.
Yeah. The good years. I call it the good years, but listen, there'll never be another Fleetwood Mac because of numerous reasons. What I deemed it over the years is magical animosity.
That's a perfect.
Exactly what it is. But
a perfect way of
the style of each of their personalities, but they're playing. Lindsay's style of Travis picking, which is using all your fingers and everything, left such a space for Chris to lay in the blues keys with that incredible rhythm section of Mick and John, and then Stevie filling in anything else that needed, plus the animosity. There were times where they were so at each other, but when they got on stage, that animosity, now you got to think about this. They were all divorcing, they were all breaking up, and Lindsay, writes a song called Go Your Own Way and tells her that, shacking up's all you want to do. And then she turns around and writes Gold Dust Woman, and said, put your kingdom up to step. Rulers make bad lovers, knowing that he was sort of ruling the band at this point. But imagine being on stage having to sing about yourself.
Never.
And they did it. And I have this
crazy to me.
I have this one video clip that's phenomenal from the shoot that I did in 1976, the first shoot that me and Curry we all did.
Yeah.
Singing Go Your Own Way for one of the very first times, and Stevie's singing Go Your Own Way, and she looks at Lindsay, and then she turns around and she looks at Chris with this smirk like, listen to this motherfucker. And she turns around and she keeps singing, but it's so perfect. And then, and you listen to songs like Silver Spring. So to me, what I like to talk about is, here I was a very young kid, because I started
both of us
18, and I was watching this, and I was too young to be in that inner circle of what Curry was going through and their love lives and everything else. I was just sort of sitting in the background, just watching this whole masterpiece come together, and so again, as we got on these tours, the stage was okay, but who was going to handle the union calls? Who was going to, so I would immediately walk into the first because lights were in first, and I would say, "Hey, my name's Leo," and I did these old union guys, and they would look at you and they give you an evil eye and say, "Hey, I'm a brother. I'm Union 33 out of Los Angeles," even though I wasn't. I sort of was. I could have been, but right there. And then so I sort of paved the way for the rest of them to come in, and then for those guys to go, "Oh, this is an okay road crew. They're not English. They're not drunk. They're not fucked up. These guys are really legit." So we started, I was sort of this de facto production manager, but we had stage management. So that's how I really got into it. But then as it got bigger, and this was a crushing thing on my ego, but it needed to be done. I got way over my head, especially the finances and everything. So we brought in Chris Lamb, who was a great production manager with Queen and a bunch of other people. Yeah. And he jumped in, and I sort of went.
We had Peter Rudge. We had Peter Rudge. Carlos had Peter Rudge.
Well, there you go. I mean, guys like that, you know, that. Yeah. But so then from there, the band always allowed us to expand technically, to build things, to make the show better. Mm-hmm. So physically and logistically, we could do things better than the rest of the bands that were out there, you know? How to hang more lights with less people, how to hang lights with the amount of time that you had, how to bring more PA, how to fly a PA so you can open up the backs and the sides. That's the reason that Tycho Brahe lost the Fleetwood Mac gig, is because they didn't want to make a flying rig. So Clark Brothers had the S4s, and we were open to open up the sides and the back. So instead of doing multiple nights and creating overhead, we were able to do one night and sell out the whole arena and hit and run and make money, you know? So
wow.
Tycho Brahe didn't want to do it. And then so Clare Brothers came in, and they just ran with it. And, you know, Tycho Brahe, man, if they would have just built a flying rig, it would have been huge.
After Fleetwood Mac, what was the next move? Because I know you played with did so many people. I know you.
Yeah, after Fleetwood Mac, well, in the middle of Fleetwood Mac, when they would go in the studio, with my theater chops, I started doing smaller acts, but more. So I did Al Jarreau for years.
I know Al very well.
Which was great. So Jerry Levin, who was with Lone Star with Curry, knew me forever. And it said, I want to do a theater tour with Al, with no light, no trussing, just lights and hanging. And he knew I knew the counterweight systems and everything else. So I did Jarreau, and then back to Fleetwood Mac, and then Christopher Cross. And then from there, I mean, it just went on and on and on. You know, the Beach Boys, and lighting wise, I did that. And then the Bette Midler tour was 1983, right after the Fleetwood Mac Mirage tour.
That was her sort of comeback.
Yeah, after her movie career sort of dropped and failed, which was, so she, yeah. So then 1990, you know, 1990 after the Behind the Mask tour is when I had a shitload of children, love them all. And that's when I built the record label and the surround sound digital system thing that.
But you managed a couple bands, Dishwalla, JR. I remember JR. You did Dishwalla. Who else did you do at that point?
Pretty much managing. That was it. I had a little stint with Glenn Phillips with Toad the Wet Sprocket, but Glenn's a great guy. But you know, I don't know. I just managing, to me, unless you can walk away from your commissions, they never work out, because when you're depending on someone else's livelihood to make your livelihood, there's too much ambiguity. JR and I, luckily, we never got to that space, but it did with me and the Dishwalla guys. But I saw over the years so many managers and artists fight and ruin friendships. You know, one of the reasons I did leave Fleetwood Mac, the biggest reason, and there's a lot of tours I left out of, but mainly Fleetwood Mac, is we were friends, and I felt it was a real family, you know, kinship. And when the dance came around in 1996, after the Behind the Mask tour, Lindsay had came back.
Yeah.
I think they were doing everything for the wrong reasons. Best Buy came in and gave them all, like, I don't know, millions each. It became about money. And the last thing that I wanted, Chico, was to have money come in the way of all those great memories and friendships that I had. I was really able, and I don't think I was invited back, to tell you the truth, because of the way it went was Irving Azoff sort of took over everything. And being that I did all of Stevie Nicks' solo stuff, you know, so this is the one thing I always forget. that I did all Stevie solo stuff, and it's a separate tour and it's a separate deal.
Yeah, with Waddy, with my friend Waddy.
Yeah, right.
Waddy
But I forget about all those years because I associate it with Fleetwood Mac. But when I did Stevie's Belladonna and Wildheart,
great. I love them. I just love the way that was presented.
Irving Azoff took over. Irving Azoff took over that situation. There were only 2 people from Fleetwood Mac on those tours. It was me and Curry. Curry because Stevie wouldn't go anywhere without him lighting wise, and then me because Curry knew that he can get what he. So with Howard Kaufman and everybody used to say, look, this isn't Fleetwood Mac. We're not going to spend the money. You do not talk to Stevie. You don't do this. It was so counter Fleetwood Mac. So I made it through 3 tours with Stevie.
Yeah.
And then I started the record label, so I didn't do the rest. But when the dance came around, it was the same management team, and they didn't want the Fleetwood Mac people around. And it wasn't so long ago that I saw this new Fleetwood Mac, and I was talking to Marty Hom, the tour manager, and Marty, he took my place. And me and Curry were sitting on the couch, and here we are, the 2 old guard. And he made some comment like, do me a favor, whatever you think of the show, please don't mention it to the band if you don't like it or whatever. And Curry said, we looked at each other like, why? He says, because, we have their ears and their eyes, but you guys have their hearts. Yeah. And if you say something, they're gonna listen. So when I did see Stevie after the show, she asked me, what do you think of the 90th Fleetwood Mac? I said, I think you were phenomenal. I didn't say I liked it because I really didn't. Because, I like the old Fleetwood Mac when there's 5 of them on stage, not 20. And
yeah,
I told her, I think you were great. I think you channeled well. I think you sound great. You look good. But so, I wasn't invited onto the dance tour because I was part of that old school, and I think they knew, and neither was Curry. I think Curry designed it, but he didn't go out on it. But, so I left because one wrong move, one wrong financial move, one wrong, decision that you're siding with the other band members or whatever would have ruined all those great relationships that I have. And today I can still say I can go up to every single one of them and still hug them and be happy. And there's no BS between me and them. Even when I do my shows, I asked Mick, I said, is this okay that us old guys talk about you guys? And we don't talk about the drugs or the sex or who is with who.
There's no point.
We talked about how we went from county fairs and flatbed trucks to stadiums in 18 months. That's what we talk about, And it was an amazing ride.
I know we have another person you work for, because you work for so many, and it's great to have you here today, because the problem is that like I interview, guitar players and everybody, and you are the people that make us on stage happen. And I don't do it anymore. I'm 65, I went through cancer, so I don't want to really push myself that much anymore. You're talking about family. It was funny because, I always go back to Billy Idol, because I know you work for Billy. But I knew Bill Aucoin. I used to call him Mr. Bill. I knew Bill Aucoin because I know Gene and Paul. I grew up with Gene and Paul in New York, Kiss and everything, when they were the Warlocks and Coventry. And Bill Aucoin said, so Chico, what do you think about these guys? I said, well, they can't use that name because the Grateful Dead used to be the Warlocks, and so they're going to change their name. And then Peter came up with Kiss. And so, I watched Bill, and then when Billy Idol came over in England, I used to live in England in Oakley Street for many years, and I met all the punks and everybody. And then Bill was playing with a band called Chelsea, and then he played with, of course, Generation Gen X. And I used to say to him all the time, I used to go, someday, you're going to come to America, and things are going to happen. Oh yeah, mate, yeah, whatever, mate, whatever. Yeah, I said, yeah, the Bromley contingent. I said, when all this starving is done and you're not living with your mom anymore, you're going to come to America and make it big. And so Bill Coyne said to me one time, so Chick, what do you think? What do you think, Jolly? What do you think, Jolly? What do you think about this band? I said, look at him. Look at him. I told him in 1977, 78 that he was going to be massive. And I said, now you're going to be massive because you see this guy? That's the devil. And he's going to make you freaking huge. But that's why Bill was very close to me, because I know Billy and Perry, his the mother of his child, and I knew them since they were kids. And we're the same age, me and Bill.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to stay in that band and be in that band because he was too close to me. I never wanted to get say, oh Chico, I need to make a new move, man. I need a new bass player. Okay, great. I never wanted to come to that. You know, matter of fact, you know something, Bill? I'm not playing with you. I'm working with Rick Springfield because you can't give me $8,000 a week. That was the truth. And that was the truth. That was the truth.
Hey, so let me tell you really quick a Kiss story.
But tell me about Billy because I really
I'll
want
tell
to.
you about Billy, but first I'm going to tell you about
Yeah.
Kiss.
Yeah.
I think it was February 1974. I had to do a show, and it was Rory Gallagher.
Oh.
And opening for Rory was the bogus Fleetwood Mac. So they call this small band, and they bring them in, and these guys walked in, painted up, all weird, doing their shit. Made it through 4 songs before they got booed off and shit thrown at them. And the band was Kiss, their first LA appearance.
Oh my God.
They got booed off after 4 songs.
Where was that? What gig? Where was
Long
that?
Beach Auditorium, 1974-ish. February.
Really?
Yeah. It was a Sunday. I remember I had to go to church, and I went to church, and I went down for the load-in, which was like about noon. And they said, yeah. And I said, that's not Fleetwood Mac. I said, what the hell? And then they said, well, I got this other band. And this small truck loaded in, and these guys came in arrogant as all hell and everything. And they went up on stage, and they weren't painted up in all their shit. They were just their faces and everything else.
Yeah, yeah.
They made it through 4 songs and got booed off and thrown out.
What was 74? So they were on Casablanca at that time.
I think so, but it was their first LA gig.
Yeah, yeah.
And they weren't even on the posters. They were called in at the last minute, so I'm sure it was a solid for what's his name from Casablanca at the time, Neil
Bogart. Neil
Bogart, right?
I knew Neil. You see, I met the Bowies in 1972. I was a downtown Max's Kansas City painted up kid, you know, the dolls and everything. And I knew Neil and Joyce before Neil had Casablanca Records. He worked for Mercury and all these other places. And years later, disco started coming in, and they, you know, of course, they did all the disco records and everything else. And then they didn't want it. Nobody wanted Kiss. You were so right. This is so funny because you're so right. Nobody wanted Kiss. And I used to say to them, I said, aspetta un minuto, Italiano. I said, aspetta un minuto, you 2 crazy Jews. Listen, just calm freaking down. You're going to be massive. You got Bill, you got Bogart. Nobody else believes in you but Neil Bogart. And that's all you need.
The first independent record company, man.
That's right. That's right.
Boy, what a vision. What a vision.
You know, if Marty Thau, when Marty Thau managed the Dolls, and before Lieber and Krabs got their hands on the Dolls and took all their money, if Marty Thau had waited another year or 2, like you're saying, and he had put the Dolls onto Casablanca, it would have been a different fucking story, man.
Crazy. Anyways, BFI.
Yeah.
BFI, man. So, you know, I knew Billy all the years, and I thought he was great. And I always thought Joe Keener at Chrysalis, I used to do some stuff with them. And in fact, my first dealing with Billy was late 90s when I did a surround mix of Rebel Yell and Eyes Without a Face. We took the masters with him and Keith Forsey, and me and my partner Ken, and Billy came in and we played it. And he was really very astute listening to it, thought it sounded great, but he said the lyric is wrong and couldn't find it because it says, last night a little dancer came dancing, knocking on my door. Last night a little dancer came, and the word was pumping on my floor, and we couldn't find that lyric. And then Keith said he remembered, I think we put a vocal track on the guitar track early on because we ran out of tracks. So we rewound it, went to the multi, and sure enough, it was there.
Wow.
But it was amazing. It was amazing that Billy remembered that, and that we found it so we could mix it correctly. And then they got to talking, and Keith Forsey said the Simple Minds track, "Don't You Forget About Me," was written for Billy, and Billy passed it on. And I'm going it would have been his biggest hit.
Yep.
And you know, when you hear it, you're going that is such a Billy track.
And he turned it fucking down flat. You know, he turned it down flat.
Unbelievable. So anyways, so I knew Billy. So here we go to 2013. I had just finished the Beach Boys 50th tour, which Tony Dimitriadis called me in. to do the Beach Boys 50th. So after the Beach Boys were done,
And what about the one with Jeff Beck that you did with Brian Wilson? Did you
that's
do
later.
one?
That's between.
But you did that one.
That's between the Billy tours.
Right.
So Rex King was Billy's normal tour manager, and Rexy had to go out with the Who. So they needed a tour manager. So Tony called me and said, "Would you like to do a Billy Idol tour?" And I said, "Sure. Why not?" I said, "I got nothing going on. And I'll help you out until Rex comes back." And never thought it was just a temporary thing. So I really, one of the greatest artists to work with. One thing that Billy and I shared a lot with is we loved history. So whenever we went places, we would like really get into stuff. He's a very quiet guy, stayed into himself.
Yeah.
But very, very, very intelligent, very stringent on his diet and taking care of himself.
Yeah.
As far as,
always a veggie. He's always been a veggie since he's a kid.
When I want to eat, at what times, and don't eat before the shows and after the shows. This is, and he Mitzi Spallis, who's his handler, sort of his stylist and everything else, is amazing with him. And so we had a good routine down. I do have a lot of stories about the band differences. Billy he takes care of everybody he works with. I mean, the band stays in 5-star hotels. They all fly business class. They all get good per diems. He takes care of his crews, he's a genuine, real, sharing, talented artist in his writing. It's hard to be what he is now at the age that he's at, but he pulls it off. And so I did one world tour in 2013. Then I did the Jeff Beck, Brian Wilson. And I came back in 2015 and did another. And the funny part was, and I think I told you this, but so I'm writing books for charity, my story, and I'm on my second book. And the second book is the third part of my life on the road, 2006 to 2017-ish.
I was going to ask you about all this, but we'll get
into it. So anyways,
yeah.
I was writing so the way I started the book was the introduction of why I wrote this part. And then I wanted to go to my very last ending of my career and then back into how I got back on the road. And it was with Billy, right? So I'm writing about us doing the Outside Land Festival in San Francisco, the very last show I ever did, right, as a tour manager. And I was talking about, what we did and, how fun it was with Billy. And then it was the Outside Land Fest is in San Francisco at Golden Gate Park, which is called Strawberry Fields, which is the old polo fields. So then I said, well, let me go back. And before I think about the very last show, let's talk about my very first show. I was 10 years old in San Francisco with my father on a bike ride through Golden Gate Park, and he navigated us straight into a love-in. At 10 years old, the Summer of Loves, 1967, with Quicksilver, Dead, everybody was there. When I go back and research, I didn't know at the time. I go back and research who was there, and I was like euphoric. The sound, the smell, the sex, the color. My mind was on overload, and I wrote. I swore to myself on that day that's what I wanted for the rest of my life. But I realized when I was writing this that my very first show and my very last show were at the exact same place.
That's just
in
the way.
Golden Gate Park.
That's just it's not.
And I didn't realize it till what? 6 years later.
It's not coincidence. It's just the way life is, and it should begin there and then end there, which is a beautiful thing.
But let me tell you some good Billy stuff. So we were doing this hellacious tour in Europe, this last run that I did with him. And I knew he wasn't good on tour buses for long rides, but we were doing these festivals that were in the middle of nowhere. So the bus rides were impossible, 12 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. And that, he's not going to do that. So I scored this little turboprop airplane that fit all of us, the band entourage and our luggage and everything. So we would fly after shows because the band was all up and hyped up anyways. And we'd get into the next city and then sleep in the mornings and do shows. And, so we were climbing the Alps. We were actually in Vienna doing a show at the Red Bull Amphitheater, and we were flying in to do some shows into Italy. And I found that we could fly from Vienna into Pisa because we were going to do Lucca and Brescia and all that. Right. So I said, okay, let's do it. So when I got to the airport after the show, the pilot said, "There's some really bad weather over the Alps. Do you want to fly?" And I said,
Richie Valens.
but I said, is it dangerous? They said, no, it's not dangerous, but it's going to be uncomfortable. So I'm thinking about getting hotels, switching schedules. And I go, no, let's just do it. If you think it's going to be okay. So we take off and, 45 minutes into the flight, we're over the Alps and we hit this fucking storm, man. This plane was rolling, popping. And I got videos of all this from my iPhone, the lightning and people in back screaming, just the band just freaking out and everything else. And I'm looking over at Billy and he's just like loving it. It's, Billy,
I know Bill.
That low.
This is going to be the end of our story, man. Our fucking guy was down in the fucking mountain.
It's funny because they would scream and he'd go, that low Billy snarl. And so we hit this one pocket and we dove, just down. And then we came back up and I looked over at Billy and I looked over and gave Billy the thumbs up. And he goes like this and he says, don't they know they'll never die on an airplane with Billy fucking Idol. So anyways, we land and we get in and it's beautiful. We come down the south side of the Alps into Italy. It's gorgeous, warm. So we land and we jump into the van. And before I get into the van, a couple of band members came up to me and got right in my face. Well, you can't do that to us anymore. That was ridiculous.
What was that? Steve and the tiny boy and the bass player.
I'm not gonna get into it. But so anyway, so they were just in my face, and I said, guys, I'm sorry, but we're here and we're safe, and we'll make it up to you. And Billy sticks his head out of the van and he says, next time you guys are more than welcome to jump on the bus with the crew.
Fuck off, you bastards.
And then I just went like, guys, I'll make it up to you. I promise. I try to diffuse I had my silent vindication, you know what I mean? And so we all got in the van and Billy looked over at me and he did that.
I've always loved him. I love Perry. Perry's back in England right now. Willem is out there doing his DJ thing.
And unfortunately, Joan, his mother just passed. God rest her soul.
Yep. And Willem, I just spoke to Willem. He's trying to, when things open up, he's trying to get a residency at one of these DJ places. Him and his buddy there. Well,
speaking of residency,
yeah,
this is where I really had the falling out, not with Billy, but with Tony. So he had got offered to do the Mandalay Bay.
Yeah, you told me. I remember.
So Billy had asked me, "What do you think?" Never not going to be honest with an artist, no matter what. So I just went. He says, "No, tell me what you think." And I said, "Billy, I just don't think it's you." I said, "The Vegas thing. You fought your whole life not to be Vegas. You're a punk, and you've always never done anything." It was a great deal. Everything paid for. It was pure cash. It was a great deal for management. They got huge commissions. So he goes, "Well, what do you think?" I said, I said, "I can't drive down the strip and see Donnie and Marie, Carrot Top, and Billy Idol."
Yeah.
And he looked at me. So he calls and tells Tony what I'm feeling. Tony calls me up and says, "I would appreciate it if you don't." Actually, it wasn't Tony that called me. It was Lawrence, his little manager, the new manager, the new young kid. Lawrence said, "We would appreciate that you don't talk to Billy about his business careers." And I said, "Lawrence," I said, "I'm sorry if it caused you problems. Maybe I was out of line, but I'm never going to lie to an artist if he asks me a question. And I'll tell you what, I love working with you. I love working with Billy, but I don't need this gig. I'm doing it as a favor to cover for Rex again. So if you just lose my number." But I had an incident in Europe that I will talk about, which really made me get off the road, okay? We just had dodged the Bataclan incident in France. Terrorism was at a full-time high. I was at a theater, and I saw some Muslim kids walk in with backpacks and sweatshirts, and I asked security to search them because I was profiling. The security manager came to me and says, "If we search them, we have to search everybody." And I realized I became this horrible person, this profiling horrible person. I said, okay, it was time. But every morning I used to get up and I used to exercise. And I used to walk up and down the train tracks because it was 4 miles religiously. And I used to walk fast, but I always got a good vibe because you'd see people. It's Europe. The coffee was always good. So one day I'm walking, we're in Munich, I put us at the Sofitel, which is connected to the train station right downtown, because I knew some of the band members needed their ADD. And if I put them anywhere else, they would have gotten mad. They needed to be around people in clubs and everything else. So I was a perfect fit. Be at the train station. There was food. There were clubs all around. So I'm walking, and I look over and I see this young girl, and I got pictures of this, Chico, this young girl with some little kids, and she's sitting there just like, and I couldn't figure it out. So I went over, I was trying to communicate with them, and I asked them if they wanted some euro, and I handed some euro, and she really got scared and said, no. And I said, I was really sad. Then I went, do you want some food? And she went, yeah. So I went and bought them some fruit, right? And I brought the fruit to these kids, and they ate it like it was like they were mad. So it's really weird. It bothered me. So the next day I did the walk again, and I saw him again, and I was going to go over and help him. And some German lady walked up to me, and she grabbed me by the arm, and she says, do you understand what this is all about, in her broken English? And I said, no. And she says, let me tell you, these kids are taken from the Eastern blocks of Romania and other places, and they're promised a great life, and they're made here to panhandle, and they panhandle all day long. And if they get the money, they get maybe a euro, and those guys on that track over there get the rest of it. They were Russians, that they were coming up with these schemes. So I was like really pissed, right? So I walked, and I was walking over to talk to these guys. I was just like, before I got there, the German police had gotten them and just took them down and arrested them and everything. I was like, oh, thank God. Because I don't know. I was like, I turned around and the kids were gone, not to be seen. I said, fuck, man. What a world. So I'm walking back to the hotel. It was the last show of the tour, and I'm ready to fly everybody home. And Lufthansa had the only nonstop from Munich to LA. Else you had to go through New York or London or whatever. And I said, wow, I'm gonna jump on this. So I did this old tour manager trick because it was really expensive. So back in the mid 2000s, all the flights and reservations were controlled by computers.
Mm-hmm.
And they would check the loads and everything. That's how they adjusted their pricing. So a week earlier, I had bought 13 first class, business class seats at full fare, and I put them in the cruise name, knowing that I had 1 week to refund them. And if I refunded them, I would get the money back, no questions asked. So the sixth day in the afternoon, I canceled everything. Well, the computer wigs out and drops all the first class pricing, $1,200. So I went back in with the credit card and I bought all 12 seats in the band's name. So now I saved $15,000, but I was able to fly the band home on this trip.
Right.
The airlines have caught on to this scheme, but I learned it from a really good travel agent. So anyways, so I was like, perfect. We're flying nonstop, not have to deal with airports. So I walk back to the hotel, and 3 of the band members get in my face about the information I sent for the flight home. I'm not going to say which 3, but
I know who they are.
I know you do, but I'm not going to say. So anyway,
I'm not saying.
What they say to me is, we have a problem. And I'm going, what's the problem? This is after I just had this deal with these kids, right? Our seats don't lay all the way back flat. And I said, excuse me? Yes, we're flying on an Airbus 400 and the seats don't lay flat. And in my contract, I said, dude, I'm the tour director. You don't have a friggin' contract and you are so out of line, all of them. I said, are you guys crazy? Are you serious? I thought they were joking, Chico. They weren't.
Yeah.
They were joking. They were serious. First time in 45 years working with Fleetwood Mac, Diana Ross, Neil Young, every artist that I've loved to work with. Did I ever let my personal feelings get in the way of my business? Was those guys. And I said to all of them, go F yourself.
Vafango.
Because I said, I'm done. I'm done with this tour. I'm done with you. So we get on the plane, and of course, the seats fly all the way back. Two of them come up to apologize, and I say, not accepted.
Not accepted. Sorry, children.
Accepted. You know what? First of all, you're not that good of a musician. Second of all, you shouldn't even be flying business class. You've got a great boss in Billy that allows you to fly business class, everybody. So I was up front with Billy. I had a first class seat with Billy because Billy and the rest were in business. Because usually I would let Mitzi or somebody fly with them, but I went to Carell Ham, my production manager, that worked his ass off on the whole friggin' tour, and I said, "You're sitting next to Billy on the way home."
Before we go to the book thing, because I've got to interview somebody at 12:15. Did you do the show in Russia as well?
No.
No, you didn't do the show in Russia. Okay, now let's go to the book.
But that's my BFI. I love BFI, and it was great, and I'm writing about it now, and there's other things I'm writing about with Billy. He's one of the greatest people I ever toured with. I love him dearly.
I love him too.
That was mine. He was at the club. I think that there are some things that went down between that I could totally admit I was wrong, and I'm sorry if it affected our relationship with me and him. But someday I'll run across him and he'll hear both sides of the story.
So which was when the Devil Smiles and Angels Frown? Was that the first book that you wrote? Was that the first one?
First book.
And that one encompasses everything that we've talked about today, your career.
No, what it does is Devil Smiles, Angel Frown is my life growing up and how I got into the business, and it goes all the way up until the last Fleetwood Mac show I did on the Behind the Mask in December 1990.
You think these guys? You think our washwoman friends around here would have some of your books? Nobody's giving me any of your books. It's not your fault, because they all said, "Oh, I got books." I said, "Well, did you read them? You got them? Let me have them, please, if you don't want them."
Well, the book is not for charity. So I have 5 children. I lost my oldest son to cancer.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about there's 2 other ones that you did: Knights of Rock and The Knight's Tale.
Right, those are episodes. So let me tell you how the whole thing started.
Yeah,
I had another business when I got off the road that crashed and burned for numerous reasons, but I'm glad it did, because if it didn't, it was a casino cruise line, and if it didn't, with COVID, would have been crushed anyway. So I had an angel on my shoulder so in the middle of all that, I decided that with where I was going in life and what I was doing, that I wanted to just be charitable, because I have been blessed. I've had the greatest life that God could give people, and I wanted to give it back to help children. And my late son had started some foundations to help children in extreme poverty with solar lights and water. So I wanted to carry that on for him. And so in the middle of that, I always had this project called Knights of Rock. And how Knights of Rock started was in San Pedro, I had a house on the cliff. It was called the Point House. And it was where bands would come. It was like a Brill House in a way, where bands would come and write, break up, fight, meetings. People used to spend the night. So one night I had like 4 or 5 tour managers that called up and said, "Hey, is the house open?" And I said, "Sure, it is. Come on up." So tour managers, friends. And so I catered a dinner. And I thought it would be cool, so I hid a cassette, a little DAT player under the couch, and I pushed record, and I just let it go. So the next day I'm listening to it, and I said, "Holy shit, this is the real story of rock and roll, this is really." So I sent it off to a friend of mine, Mark Brickman and Jerry Levin, the 2 of them who were, influential people in my life. And so I said, "Guys, listen to this." So Mark says, "Man, we should film something like this." So in January of 2006, at the Warner Grand in San Pedro, I had a dinner, and I invited a bunch of guys, and I didn't tell anybody who was going to be there. And we had a dinner, and I filmed it. And it became Knights of Rock. Knights of Rock, with a K, like Knights of the Round Table, was never meant to be anything but a yuck. It's like put it up online and just do shit with it. So it sat up there, it had a password, and every once in a while we'd pass it around to people. So then when Cameron Crowe's roadie show died, somebody found it and said, "This is the real story. Can we do something with it?" And I said, "Only if me and my buddies have complete creative control." And they said, "No." And I said, "Well, then you ain't getting it."
Right.
So in that, I saw the interest that was starting to happen. So I did another night's dinner, but this time with the 6 Fleetwood Mac guys: Mark, Kenny, me, Rhino, and Raymond. And and Curry. So we all had a dinner, and I filmed it. And I invited a friend of mine down named Larry Heimgartner. Now, Larry ran the Harvard College Theatrical Department. And Larry had this project called Our World. And in Our World, he writes one-play episodes about poverty, HIV, women oppression. He's done 35 of them, and they're one-act shows, sort of very motivational, inspirational. So I invited him and said, "Can you write a script for Knights of Rock? I think it would be cool," not knowing about Our World. So he says, he's there and he does it. So he calls me up and he says, Leo, Knights of Rock doesn't need a script. It just doesn't. It just runs on its own. He goes, but I want to do an Our World on your life. He goes, I know your two youngest kids. I heard about Tristan. He goes, I just Googled Ryan and I'm just over the moon about what he did. And I said, no, Larry, I don't want to tell my story. He says, no, it's not about that. He goes, it's not about the band. It's about you. It's about look where you came from. You were Italian Catholic. You fell into this shit. Those guys were much older than you, but they looked up to you, you know? And I went like, well, I still don't want to do it. So he says, do you got any memoirs? And I said, over the years, I've been writing passages and notes. So I gave him everything. So he said to me, let me write one. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do anything with it. So right between Christmas and New Year's, he calls me and I walk into this little dark room and out walks this kid and he does my life. And I'm sitting there and I'm going like, this is really friggin' cool.
Right.
And he goes, well, it's your life. And I went like, yeah, but it's wrong, but I can help him get it right. And I think he goes, no, the kid ain't going to do it. You need to do it.
Yeah.
And he says, you need to tell your story. And he goes, and the thing that got me, Chico, is when he said, your grandkids' kids are going to come up someday and say, your grandfather saved my life. I'm telling you, I've seen it happen. So he says, do me a favor, let's just do one. But I want to put multimedia and everything. I know you have the assets. So over a course of 6 months, we built this show called A Knight's Tale, which is
right.
my story.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a high school and with some at-risk children and some other, they mixed at-risk with like writers and geniuses, and it was a school thing. And I went up and I did the show. And I sat there and at the end and I said, you know, thank you for sharing my story. My name is Leo Rossi and blah, 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 blah. And it was just dead quiet. I go, fuck, this did not work. This stiffed. And then we got to the Q&A and then the applause started. Then we got to the Q&A and the kids started asking questions. And the next day, the teacher calls me and says, can you come to the school? The kids would really want to meet you face to face. So me and Chuck Alvarez, believe it or not, playing guitar.
Wow.
Chuck had his own story. Yeah. So we went and the kids, especially the kids in the writing class and the creative classes, were so amazing. And I was listening to this one girl read her poetry and she was telling me about, you know, she was so amazing. And I had this vision, this thing. And I saw Stevie Nicks writing dreams and shit in the dressing room. And I'm going like, fuck, this is really, and she was asking me like, you were right next to her. How was it? And is she really like they say? And I said, you know, you remind me a lot of her, you know, and you just saw the beaming and the hope you were giving these children. And I said, okay, I get it, Larry. I get it. So I did a show at Alba's showroom for drug addiction and for Ryan's charity. And there were a couple of guys from Princess Cruises that were in the audience and with their wives. And one guy came up to me and said, you need to do this on the cruise ships. This is really powerful shit. So from there, I started doing these shows. And I didn't only do them Knight's Tale. I did Knights of Rock Fleetwood Mac. I did Knights of Rock Bette Midler. I started writing these episodes and putting in,
I remember you told me.
putting all these assets, these rich assets in. So as I'm on the ship and I'm doing these ships, people kept saying to me, when are you going to write a book? I mean, do you have a book for sale? And I started thinking, oh my God, if I do write a book, it's a great way that I don't have to ask for donations anymore for the charity, for my son Ryan's charity. So I found a great publisher and self-published, and Ryan's charity is the publisher of the book.
Wow.
So all the money goes into the charity. And as I wrote the book, I started realizing that, you know, there's a way to tell the story. The editors that I found, that I interviewed a ton of them through my publisher. And one editor that got me, he says, look, I'm going to tell you something right now. It's good. It's a good book, but it's not a great book. And he goes, but I'm going to tell you something. No one gives a fuck about you. They don't care about you. It's the people that you were with that is going to get people to read this book. And then what I see here, if you write this the way that I think, they're going to learn to love you. And then your story can be told. And you're lucky that you have these people that could lead people to your story. And he says, you have to arc your story. What is your mission? What do you want to tell people? You know, what is the main thing? You know, and my main thing was You're going to have shit happen to you. You're going to overcome it, but you have to leave this world better than you found it. And that's basically it. So I wrote the book, and I realized I couldn't write it all because it ended up being 600 pages, and I had to take stuff out. But they said, that's okay, because in your next book, you can reflect back. So I go out and I just do episodes, and I'm writing book number 2. I'm on chapter 5. I'm writing right now about the John Fogerty tour, which is amazing. You know, working with John, amazing. Working with his band was amazing. So I'm writing book number 2. I'm up here with COVID.
Kenny's in that. Kenny was in that band, right? Kenny, yeah, Kenny, yeah, because I played with Kenny.
And so I'm up here up by Lake Shasta. I get creative every day, and I sort of gave up. You know, I have no more pressures. I have no more overhead. I get my Social Security. I write, and when the ships come back, you know, every cruise I was selling between 30 and 100 books, depending on, I signed every single one, and and if anybody wants to buy a book, it's leosbook.org. If you put in the instruction box your name, I'll sign it for you. I'll ship it out.
Leosbook.org?
Leosbook.org. You can go on Amazon and get it, but the Amazon book is black and white because they don't print books over 600 pages.
Which title is this one now?
This is When the Devil Smiles, the Angels Frown.
That's right. I love that title.
Now, you could also get it on Kindle. And what you could really do is go to Apple iBooks, which just came out last week, and you can get the iBook version. And on the iBook version, when you click on words and pictures, videos, go to YouTube, it's a real interactive piece. There's interviews that there's testimonials that I say, like you'll push on a picture and you'll hear me talk about it. And
wow.
It's really cool. So yeah, so I'm writing book number 2 right now. And, I'm here to say that people like you and I are lucky people. We're fortunate. It's our responsibility to give back. And I think what we need to do is just tell everybody in the world that we're going to get through all this shit.
Yeah.
There's nothing stronger in the world than the human spirit, nothing. And we will get through it. But if we are going to get through it, we are going to work on it. We have to build a stronger foundation. And the reason classic rock is classic is because they did things for the right reasons. They did it for art. They did it to make a message, to make a statement. They had good messages, and they did it out of love.
I think, we were talking, I had a little symposium and dissertation with some guys in the music business, some producers and musicians, and we were talking about the present state of the business right now, rock music. And it has lost its way because, I picked, I picked 5 bands that I felt in the past 10 years that I liked or had something to contribute, and for me, that was, the glam, crazy, heavy rock, Black Veil Brides. What the hell? I liked, Five Finger Death Punch, Breaking Benjamin, Seether, and The Muse. Those were my 5 bands. And I said, the problem is that the radio that's controlled right now is controlled so in a frame that there's no rock going to get in with any of this rap, any of this pablum crap. And it's the business itself that's killed the
But let me tell you where it's at, okay? Because I was involved when we went from analog to digital. I was involved in the downloads. I was consulting for EMI. Technology has a lot to do with this. Technology has a lot to do with the cultural change that these kids that are becoming buying adults and trendsetters, their first toy in life was an iPad. It wasn't a Barbie doll. It wasn't a baseball glove. So their attention span is based around that. So what I tell young bands right now is this. It's not about the music yet. The first thing you have to do is tell your story because they are identifying to stories. They're identifying to YouTube, TikTok, Snapchats. But you have to be really keen and really talented to tell a compelling story in 30 seconds. You have to grab them in 30 to 60 seconds. And if you get them, they will Google and find out more. So as they find that story, I had a girl the other day. She was trying to identify her story. And she said, my dad didn't believe in me as a singer. In fact, one day he came up, I was singing in my room and he cut the cable of my microphone. And I said, that's your story. Cut the cable. because there's a million girls out there that can relate to what just happened to you. Now, you tell that story, but if they dig one level deeper, if you have everything ready to tell that story, you will get them and they will be compelled. The background music of that whole story is what they're going to buy. That's where your music needs to live. If you think you're going to come out and be a rapper and you're going to be the next Cardi B, you're friggin' wrong.
Well, the next big Cardi B has my friend Mark Cheatham as her agent, so that's why she became massive. But the problem was with the rock music for me right now is exactly there's not enough moxie. There's no Billy Idols. I just had this thing about Michael Hutchins, who was my good friend. We were just talking about.
Amazing.
I think the five bands that I mentioned, they all have a front personality that's incredible, but they're all underground. There is no mainstream. There is no platform for rock and roll, fuck rock and roll. There's no platforms for rock bands anymore. There's nothing.
But if you go to Amazon and iTunes and all these other places, you'll find out that even with the Gen Zs, the streaming and the number one is classic rock. It is Led Zeppelin.
Classic rock.
Boo. It is Fleetwood Mac.
Classic rock.
It is. You know what I mean? It is. It's still there. So, again, it's so funny when it's so funny when like a lot of us go on stage because we show young pictures of ourselves of what we were like when we were these young rock gods doing things, and then we walk on stage as older guys. I mean, one of my buddies was a rock god and now he's a lawyer and he's got no hair and he's chubby and he walks out and it's hilarious. But within 30 seconds after you tell the first story, you realize that we were 10 feet from greatness every day of our lives, and how we helped them get great. And, and we didn't do it because we wanted to be great. We did it because it's something we were proud of doing. We didn't want to look like idiots. We knew we could do this.
I just hope, and we both have friends. I'm not active anymore. I don't want to play anymore. I'm tired of it. But I just know that everybody that's out there, from the Walter Trouts to the Papa Chubbies to the Tim McGraws and everybody, all their bands are suffering so much. All the musicians are suffering so
Venues,
much. Nonsense.
Look at Eighth Day Audio just sold to Clare Brothers. Clare Brothers luckily got a $71 million loan. The venues are closing. Live Nation's getting exactly what they deserve. You know what I'm saying?
True.
But they'll get bailed out. They will get bailed out,
That's true.
But, when we all do come back, imagine, look at a theater like the Warner Grand in San Pedro, 1,500 seats. They can become their own promoter. Bands don't need promoters anymore. They don't even need agents, as much as a lot of my good friends are agents. But, look at Live Nation comes up and says, we're not insuring you. You have to have your own pandemic insurance. There's no more guarantees. If you don't sell, you don't get paid. But can you blame them?
What is this? The Sunset Strip at the Magliari's? At the fucking Whiskey A Go-Go? You're not guaranteeing, you're not getting paid. Who the fuck are these people?
% is pay to play, right?
Exactly.
Here we are. We're at a real crossroads, and you have to leave it up to the youngers to try to rewrite this wrong. I mean, it's a pandemic that hit. And, again, this is a good opportunity for us to take this negative and turn it into positive and build the new thing that's going to become the right way. And like we did at Classic Rock and like we did in those days, So,
extricate yourselves from the agents and from the managers and the promoters and everything else, and just do it on your own.
And that's my message. I go out and I say, look, I've had a great life. I lost a son. It's the most horrible thing in life. There's nothing. I don't wish that on anybody.
I only have one, so if I lost him, I wouldn't be here.
I realized why it happened. I reconciled it. And I'm using his beautiful life and my beautiful life together to help people understand. I've had people come up to me on ships and at gigs and say, I'm in that club. I lost a son and I've never been able to talk about it, but I see your strength and I've got strong myself from it. And I'm ready to deal with it. I'm ready to find my mission in life. I had one lady that came up to me. She lost a son as an overdose. And she was so mad at him because my son had a choice, yours didn't.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, don't go there. And she says, no, that's not the point. I said, what's the point? She says, I know what I need to do now. I need to go out and make sure that no mother ever feels like I feel. And she goes, that's what I learned from you. And I said, well, if that's the reason that God put us together, then that's it. And if you need my help, here's my email, here's my number. At any time, you can call me.
Now, how's your beautiful girlfriend? How's she doing?
She's doing great. She's doing wonderful. You know,
And you like living,
everything-
you like living up there in the solitude, and it's
I
nice.
do. I miss my friends. I miss hanging out with you guys at the Raffaello's, and I miss seeing my children. But again, I'm a phone call or a train trip away, or if, I'm not going to fly. I could drive. I love driving my car. I brought my little 350Z up here.
I know you told me the other night. I did the front end. It did
No, I got it all redone.
It's a Ferrari. It's a
No,
Ferrari.
you know what? Everything's great. My family, God bless, and so for me, I thank God every day. And again.
Hey, let's do this again. Let's do this again. Thank you. This is Chico Ray for Chico Ray Rocks and Leo Rossi. Leo's one of the guys that makes this business happen. No artist goes out on stage and becomes successful without someone like Leo. Forget the managers, forget the booking agents. It's Leo and the guys that make us artists and the artists that Leo's worked with, some of the greatest happen. And whenever you go see a concert, it's because of guys like him that make these classic rocks, classic acts.
I listen to this. So when I went to have the forward for my book written, I went to one of my artists that I toured with and I asked him to do it. And through management kludge and everything, it didn't happen, but it was a blessing in disguise because I had the great Neil Preston, the great rock photographer of life, came up to me because I took some of his pictures for my book. He said, let me write your forward. And if you read the forward in my book with what Neil writes about, not about me, it's about the cruise. It's about what we did. And his forward is amazing. And at the very end, he just says, what Leo writes in this book is the real deal. If you read that, it is a great, it's just what you're saying. These bands, you know what? Everybody says, hey, behind every good band, there's a crew. That ain't it. Behind every great crew, there's a great band. And that's the way it is, man.
My brother, I'll speak to you soon, okay?
Man, let me know when it airs. I like to see it.
I'll see you. I'll make sure we forward this to you and get everything. And we'll do this again. We'll do this again because I have something else. I have a couple of other guys that have been in different parts of the music business.
Hey, there's 6 of us that Zoom once a month.
Yeah.
All different guys. I can get the Knights of Rock on. We can do a whole Zoom thing with them. They'd love to talk about it.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
We do it every 2 weeks. We Zoom each other. In fact, my friend Chuck just finished doing that Keith Urban Amazon thing, and we all waited to find out how it went. And we're going to probably Zoom this weekend. So I can get Jerry Levin, Curry, Ray. You just let me know what you want to talk about, and I'll get the right guys, and we can do a Knights of Rock Zoom.
That's great. Okay, brother. I'll speak to you soon.
Ciao.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.